In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you my Lightning Sorceress Build. This is an Endgame Sorceress build that's aimed at World Tier 3, where you'll be taking on Helltides, Nightmare Dungeons, and more. This build is best suited for when you've reached level 50 and are ready to spend some time farming for specific equipment. You can get here from our previous Immortal Lightning Sorceress build, but some items and legendaries may not be easily available early on. This build has decent survivability, but will require that you keep on the move to maximize your damage. The highlight of this build is its great speed achieved by using teleport plus attack speed and plus movement speed bonuses. You will also be maximizing the use of all shock skills and further boosting them with gear and the Paragon system. You'll have fantastic AoE damage, while also enjoying good single target melts and an ultimate skill every 60 seconds or less that can kill a Nightmare Dungeon boss in under 30. Your main gameplay rotation will be to cast Ball Lightning to start an encounter and teleport yourself into the enemy group to damage them just as you arrive. You'll cast Charged Bolts to quickly kill everything around you, and if there are elites in the group, you'll use Arc Lash to stun them, then use Chain Lightning to deal massive damage. For big groups, we'll also use our ultimate Unstable Currents, which will increase our attack speed by 25% and cast a random shock skill for every shock skill you use. Unlike our beginner build, I won't be getting into the exact specifics of all the skills that we're using and their upgrades, etc., but you can see on the screen a list of all the skill points we spend in this build, and you can find this in the written guide as well. This build's DPS is further boosted by the smart use of enchantments, and we will double up Ball Lightning to also obtain its enchantment effect. It gives Lucky Hit a 25% chance to spawn a static ball of lightning. To double down on our AoE damage, we'll assign Charged Bolts as the second enchantment, giving every stun a 40% chance to spawn 3 Charged Bolts within the enemy group. The key synergies that make a difference to your survivability and rotation come from passives. Elemental Attunement will give you a 15% chance to reset your teleport, which is invaluable in battle as it will deal damage while also moving you from danger. Align the Elements will make it so that you take up to 40% less damage from elites, and Mana Shield will give you a 10% damage reduction for every mana spent. Protection makes it so that using the cooldown grants you 20% of your life as a barrier, and this allows you to stand in the same spot to unleash all your skills when you cast your ultimate. Coursing Currents will make it so that all your shock skills will generate plus 3% chance to critical strike. Conduction makes it so that all your crits will give you a movement speed bonus, and Convulsions will make it so that on Lucky Hit your skills have a chance to stun enemies. Shocking Impact makes it so that every time you stun an enemy you deal extra lightning damage, and Prime Unstable Currents increases your attack speed by 25% when your ultimate is active. And lastly, Veer's Mastery makes it so that close enemies take 10% increased damage and deal 20% less damage. The interconnection of these passives and the gear we select gives you incredible AoE DPS, attack speed, and movement speed, which will make going through Nightmare Dungeons and Helltides a very quick matter. Equipment is a critical part of any level 50 plus build, as this is where the actual itemization begins to take shape in the game. For this level 50 Sorceress build, we'll be looking to get gear of specific bonuses to our main damage dealer skills, but also want to focus on boosting attack speed, movement speed, shock skill damage, lightning and damage versus stunned enemies, all damage, and attack speed. You should also look to increase your stats with plus stat bonuses on gear for willpower, which gives you regen and overpower damage, intelligence, which gives you skill damage and elemental resistances, and dexterity for critical strike chance. I have kept damage type resistances, poison, shadow, etc. buffs on armor, as it can be troublesome to deal with elemental packs. With this setup, our out of combat buff rests at about 45% against all damage types, and we can increase those when using our in combat skills and obtaining additional buffs from elixirs. Jewelry bonuses you can benefit from are cooldown reduction, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, lucky hit chance, and damage to crowd controlled or stunned enemies. If you're extremely lucky, I found boots that increase critical strike chance by 16% of your movement speed bonus. I have 132% movement speed right now, so it's giving me a decent amount of critical. Legendary aspects you want to be on the lookout for are Stable Aspect, which makes it so that while Unstable Currents is not active, your shock skills have an 8 to 15% chance to trigger a free cast. Gravitational Aspect, which makes Ball Lightning orbit around you, but its damage is decreased by 10 to 20%. Aspect of Static Cling, which makes your cast of Charged Bolts have a chance to be attracted to enemies and last longer. Aspect of the Unbroken Tether, which makes Chain Lightning have a percentage chance to chain additional times. Protecting Aspect, which makes it so that when you're hit below 80% health, a magic bubble is summoned around you, and you're immune to damage and crowd control effects for the duration of this bubble. Aspect of the Protector, which makes it so that when you damage an elite, you gain a damage shield for 10 seconds. Mighty Aspect, which makes it so that when you use a basic skill, you gain damage reduction for a few seconds. Mother's Embrace, which is a unique ring you get from completing the main campaign that makes it so that if you hit more than 5 enemies with a core skill, you refund a percentage of its cost. And Aspect of Retribution, which makes it so distant enemies have an 8% chance to be stunned when they hit you, and you deal increased damage to stunned enemies. A very important and easily neglected aspect of equipment is the enchant and upgrade options. By this point in the game, you should have sufficient materials to upgrade your equipment 3 times or so. This actually does make a difference, so make sure that you do it, particularly if you have plus skill gear, as it can level it up to have plus 3 instead of plus 2, for example. For enchanting, you may find the cost can be high, and you'll have to do additional Helltides to obtain materials. But being able to remove an unwanted bonus can be very impactful to your overall build. Gems are also an important part of the game, and you can create slots on your equipment and you can swap them in and out. To improve survivability, I have focused on rubies for armor, which give max life, diamonds for jewelry, which give plus percentage elemental resistances, and topaz on the weapon for plus basic skill damage. From level 50 onward, you don't obtain any more skill points and instead gain 4 Paragon points per level. Paragon points are used to unlock nodes in a separate tree, and each node can give a minimum of plus 5 to any stat, plus percentage damage reduction, or significant boost to your damage output. As you level Paragon, you want to put points into willpower and intelligence, but you'll want to take the tactician glyph in your slot, as it's the most balanced for DPS and resistances. You'll have to assign 25 points of dexterity around it, but once you do this, you'll get a very nice boost to the rare nodes higher on your tree, and that boosts your non-physical damage by 16%, so basically all of your damage. Additionally, this glyph gives you a 10% increased damage for 4 seconds after casting a defensive skill, so you'll be able to maximize this when using your teleport. The default radius will also catch other rare nodes to give you plus 16 intelligence and plus 6.4 resistance to all elements. Another good node to use if you're looking to simply up your damage is territorial, and this increases your damage dealt to close enemies based on the dexterity you have in range of this slot. If you meet the 25 requirement, you'll also get minus 10% incoming damage from close enemies. Lastly, if you're struggling with mana consumption, there's a glyph called Unleash that increases your damage and mana regeneration for 3 seconds for every 50 mana you spend, so roughly 1 lightning ball. It can be useful, but the DPS boost is not as significant as the other glyphs. Once you've made it to the top gate, you can select your second Paragon tree. Pick the lightning tree that is focused on damage to stunned enemies and start making your way to the plus 30% damage to stunned enemy slots. This will greatly aid your DPS, as you should be stunning enemies very often. Final tips. The Lightning Sorc build is perfect to complete content quickly, even on tier 10 plus Nightmare dungeons. Your main weaknesses are your limited heals and survivability and your mana consumption. You can make adjustments to your gear to include more mana cost reduction and regen on Paragon points. Your movement, speed, and teleports should be sufficient to get you out of any sticky situation and should make running through content a lot faster than most other builds. So that wraps up our Lightning Speed Sorceress build. I hope you guys found it useful. This is a very high speed, high mobility Sorceress build for fast dungeon clears and Helltide clears. We will have more Sorceress build guides very shortly, so stay tuned for those.